Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education Thursday, April 25th at 3:09. We're going to start. We've got a couple of, or maybe one change at this point to the miscellaneous education bill that we've moved the latest next Wednesday. There's a couple of other issues related to it that we'll talk about. But Ms. St. James, do you mind in our folders, we have an updated version of 874.
Yeah, that's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. So what you actually have is a first draft of the strike all amendment to 874. And there's only one change here, and it occurs in section highlighted. It is section 8, page 14. This language is the recommendation of VSAC, is my understanding, related to the provision of information about post-secondary armed services options or opportunities. And the previous language, or the bill is passed by the House, had in section 8, essentially the same requirement that VSAC publish and include in all of its planning publications information about armed services opportunities after high school. The recommendation from VSAC is to keep that requirement but to add it to a different place in the green books. So the bill is passed by the House, created a standalone statute, a new statute in the VSAC chapter. And what draft 1.1 of your strike all amendment reflects, and what VSAC recommended, is taking very similar language and actually incorporating it into a statute that already exists in the VSAC chapter. Section 2857, the Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program statute. And so it would add a subsection all the way at the end of that statute that requires the same thing. The corporation's print and website financial aid and planning publications for post-secondary education and training resources shall include Vermont National Guard and United States Armed Forces options relevant to each publication. I don't think there's anything legally wrong with putting this language here.
Okay.
But this statute is about a standalone program, the Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program. The language on lines 13 through 16 is not about it. Is the National Guard Tuition Benefit Program might be included as an option in the planning resources, but presumably there would be many other options from different branches of the armed services and different types of options, right? Tuition benefit. Maybe there's I'm not sure of all the other benefits, but so I think from just kind of an organizational standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me to include this language in this particular statute.
Okay.
Is there anything legally wrong with that? No.
Okay. But does it make it, if you're saying it makes it confusing in part in the future?
So as a user of the green books, right?
Yeah.
A lawyer.
Yeah.
I am always trying to think of where's someone going to look for this information.
Right.
And I can see an argument that because the statute says Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program, someone looking for information about armed service options may look there. But I can also see an argument that someone who is looking for information about the Naval Academy or what are the Army's benefits, right? Or the Marines benefits or the Coast Guard, right? They may just blow past this statute. There's absolutely nothing legally wrong with putting this information here. This is a policy choice.
So where should we put it? Or you're recommending, in terms of if we want to meet the goals that you just put forward, which seems to make sense to me, does it mean that doesn't even belong to this committee?
No, oh no.
Okay.
I would say, I would suggest that you take the language that VSAC has in subsection H, lines 13 through 16, and you just put it back to the way it was before in a standalone statute, a brand new statute in the VSAC chapter. I think it was called. lots of amendments, let's see. Planning resources, and you could title the chapter anything. Or the section, anything you wanted. VSAC did, I think, greatly improve upon the language that was in here. It makes probably more sense to them since they would be the ones carrying this out. The place that this language should live, I'm not convinced this is the best place. And I see no reason why you couldn't just create a whole new statute regarding their planning resources. But like I said, if you want to keep it here, or if it makes sense to you, there's absolutely nothing legally wrong with that. Not
Does anybody
whatsoever.
have any issues with changing it to where, yes, please?
I do have a quick question, thank you. Are there other entities out there that give financial aid? I mean, I hear your point about like, if you're gonna put one, you put all of them, like, I'm just thinking like the Peace Corps or Teach for America or.
Oh, well,
are
so
there
this,
programs?
I'm sure this language is specific to armed service options, to military related options. So it was not about like volunteer opportunities or anything like that, that are not related to the armed services.
Right, so this is a policy decision. To just do farm services and not include full panoply
Yeah.
of, okay.
So if we created a separate chapter for this, sort of section,
Section.
then if the Air Force or Marine Corps or Peace Corps, well, not Peace Corps, because that's not military. They would have a place to have their own index item where they could go and find this information.
No, it would just be a standalone section in the VSAC chapter in your green books.
Okay,
And it would say planning resources. You could put, a modifier in there that could say, post-secondary armed service options, and then, include that language, but, there is an index to the green books.
Yeah.
And there would presumably be some buzzwords related to the armed services that someone could find this information that way.
Yeah. St. James. Do it.
Thank you. Can you all remind me why we're singling out the armed services as opposed to all the other things? What was I can't remember. What was the conversation? Anyone remember?
I can try to paraphrase. It's not my subject, but what I recall from testimony was that resulted in exclusion from access to these programs or this vehicle for information to our students. And they want to codify its involvement. And I would submit that if Peace Corps or whomever had a similar feeling or experience, that they might too come to the table and ask for a like consideration. That's not the case.
But the only ones who came to us was the Vermont National Guard. Air or Army or both?
both. The National Guard is a entity within the Vermont government. So then they felt, because I think when Chief of the National Guard Bureau became a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they had to recruit and compete with the active component. They lost that individualism within Vermont schools. So, and that's my understanding. I don't know if that's the case.
I think the genesis of all of it was called the military caucus.
Correct. Well, they have their
It's
own
not the military.
legislative,
National Guard.
Armed National Guard and VA caucus.
and we have a military, is one of the agencies, legislative committees, right? I can't remember.
House.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I do. It's,
In-house military affairs?
no, military.
Yeah. So Miss St. James, I'm personally comfortable with going the direction that you want to go with in terms of putting it back, having us. You're saying put it back to the way that it was in the House version.
I am suggesting for
Suggesting.
you all to decide.
Yeah.
I think that the VSAC language for
That's fine.
on lines 13 through 16 is great. It's if it meets your goals, then I think it's an improvement upon the language that came as passed by the House. And my suggestion is just where should this language live, and as passed by the House version create the new standalone statute, and that's what I'm suggesting, you plunk this into a standalone statute.
Makes sense to me.
I can make that motion, yeah, that's
Beautiful, that's great, thank you.
I'll start.
Great. Great. So now, if you would stick with us, Ms. St. James, so we can make a decision about community schools. So if we could, the community schools section, I guess.
It's no opposite military thing.
That's right. So I believe, so the funding piece is section 3 on page 4. Just. And Ms. St. James, just correct me if I get this wrong, what we would be doing with the community schools section, if it were to pass, is we would continue the grant program. As the chair of appropriations said, it would be $1 million out of the education fund if we were to continue this. And is there anything else related to community schools at all?
So we're talking about section 5 on page 4, line 18. Right?
That's correct.
Okay. So section 5 would amend the community schools bill from 2021. That's just session law. So it would amend the bill to leave funding for community schools grant program open-ended. And then section 5A does require some reporting on the community schools program. And then section 6 contains the appropriation, and it is for $1 million out of the ed fund.
That is not page
10. Line 12.
any pleasure. I know there's a lot of conversation about pressures on the ed fund. Long conversation on the floor. Senator Schiff, please.
If anything seems relevant out of the ed fund, it's this community schools. So I'm not opposed to, these funds from the ed fund supporting this.
Senator Dewar.
I'm not opposed at all. I mean, I think if we were gonna cut anything, I've said it before, I think early college for rich people would be a good place to start, or maybe even dual enrollment for rich people. But not community schools.
$1 million. Senator Weeks.
So, well, 1 million is only 0.0003% of the education budget, which is a drop in the bucket. My sense is that the community schools was a concept at the federal level, had merit, pushed down during COVID to states, good idea. But if the states struggle to either fund or see the great, the implicit value, that we're at a parapet where we decide whether it's a good program or not. Personally, having listened to the testimony, I think that the effort of the community schools is worthy, but I don't really think that they're going towards the goal of becoming this community center for, health and welfare, mental health, emergency services, et cetera, that may have been intended. I think what I heard was that the folks who actually were the coordinators in those individual schools did great yeoman's work, but I don't see it as a program that's necessary for continuation, given all the other challenges to it. That's just my opinion.
Senator Williams, give us a.
Um, I think that if we're gonna go, sounds like some school districts may have to merge again. They do, maybe communities call it schools, the way you call. But that's kind of like the way it used to be when I went to school. I just,
I mean, like a
I really-
Okay, go ahead, sir.
no, I really don't have an opinion one way or the other. I can see the benefit of it, but I don't think we should be spending extra money on it. When there's needs elsewhere.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that in the yield bill, which has the commission and all the, which is to create the vision for Vermont's education system, I believe the community schools is a line item in there for analysis, if I remember correctly. But, and I would like that level of analysis done to see where and how that concept fits into our communities.
Senator,
Hey, certainly, my colleague, what greater needs are there than what the needs that the community schools provide? Can you elaborate on that?
So I think the concept is good. I just don't think the execution was fit the original intent of what community schools should be or should become. And again, I think that the commission can address.
Can you elaborate on that? How was the execution not what it was originally designed to be?
Because I think when I first heard the community schools outlined in testimony, it was to serve as a community hub for health and welfare programs, adult training programs, potentially CTE. They become emergency preparedness centers they become a hub for the community, not just the school. And I didn't see that, in the testimony, I didn't hear that they achieved that goal. I heard that they did great work in enlisting community support for the school, but not towards the concept that I heard the original intent.
Maybe you need to take more testimony, because that's not at all what I understood the community schools to be. I understood the community schools to be kind of a push-in model where you've got needy kids who might not have a place to sleep, so the school helps provide a place to sleep for that kid. They may not have had a dentist appointment for 10 years, so there's someone at the school who makes that appointment and gets them to that appointment. So it's actually taking care of like the basic needs of kids who don't get it otherwise. And I mean, I think the schools that exist are in fairly high poverty areas. Is that correct?
Well, it's a good question. We should look at the criteria again, but at least in Bennington, the one model that we have, still have to some extent, is the Molly Stark School, high poverty school. It's a dentist's office in the school, and not every school is gonna have that. But get a kid to it, if you have a coordinator in the school, get a kid to a doctor's appointment, get the kid, extra food. I mean, those are the kinds of bring them to their appointment sort of situation, as I understand it.
Yeah, me too.
It kind of dovetails with the community nursing program that we looked at in health and welfare, but you got one program here, one program here. It'd be nice if we could make it all one program.
The community nursing definitely is for elderly folks.
Well, I'm polished, almost.
You're up. Thank you. I have to agree with Senator Williams about the changing ecosystem that we're seeing, and we're not going to just suddenly see these community schools propped up that are, 100% doing all the things that that we have been, that it has been envisioned. This is something that's going to take time and development, and it takes time to also get buy-in from stakeholders to get something, to 100% of what you're expecting. And from the presentations I've seen, it seems like things are going quite well, for some of these schools, and it's a work in progress. It takes time, it takes investment, and it takes development, and the system is changing, and with what I've seen as so far a successful change, stopping it now seems like a really bad idea. And I'm definitely all for keeping it in. I mean, I haven't, leave it at that.
Yeah, I hate to lose it also. I also hate when we start programs when they disappear, especially ones that I think are helping kids and families who are struggling the most. Is there anything on Miss St. James that would, based on how this is written, and I've not read it recently, that would allow dollars to go to schools where we have a more comfortable population? In other words, if we're trying, everything here, we are trying to serve the neediest kids, the neediest families. If I don't know, a school that is it CUW? What's the one up north? CVU. I think it's pretty well known as a school that has some resources. There's a lot of people pitching in. CVU gets these monies. Doesn't seem to be pass a straight face test for me. I'd rather see them at the schools again. I'm not saying they're not dealing with poverty and other issues, but there are some schools where they really need these funds. So let's see what she says.
I am going to have to, I'm pulling up Act 67 right now, because I think this bill does not change the eligibility requirements, and they're actually not listed in the bill, so. Pulling up the eligibility requirements.
And I appreciate doing this because I do remember when we did hear from some of the reports, I wasn't 100% sure if.
So.
I want to jump in
Just, it kind of goes back with what I said about the BOCES. This should be all part of an education vision. That maybe the new Agency of Education Secretary or somebody has a vision for it and keep this as a placeholder. The funding's there, it's available, we can use it. If the bill passes, we can use it as needed by whatever community needs it. And have that be a part of the plan.
They may use 500,000, they may use 750, 100,000, yeah.
So, an eligible recipient, this is a two-parter. Eligible recipient means a school district with one or more eligible schools, an SU with one or more eligible schools, two or more school districts, each with one or more eligible schools that seek to work collaboratively, or two or more SUs, each with one or more eligible schools that seek to work collaboratively. So we're going to talk about what an eligible school is, but I just want to point out that eligible recipients could be a school district or an SU with one or more eligible schools. If you go in the other direction, that means that the school district could be, or the supervisory union could have schools that would not be eligible. But I believe the next term eligible school is limiting those funds to the school itself. So eligible school means a public elementary or secondary school that has a student body where at least 40% of students are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, or has been identified for comprehensive or equity support and intervention under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or is otherwise identified by the state as in need of additional support.
Where's that located?
It is on page 8 of Act 67, 2021 Acts and Resolves, number 67. On page 8. 2021. The site for it is right on page 4 of the bill, the section 5.
Thanks.
Yep.
So I just took a second to look at H 887, which is the yield bill, and in there on page 8, line 17 and 18, under the intended commission's roles for policy development is whether Vermont's vision for public education should include the provision of wraparound services and co-location services. And that to me is the essence of the community school proposal. No, not, well, maybe you could interpret it as BOCES as well. But wraparound services, I interpret that to be health and welfare program, essentially. I think it's appropriate to pull back, take a look at the whole landscape of Vermont's education system, as it's recommended in this commission. Focus and see what and how we want to implement this.
So that bill hasn't passed yet.
No.
It's still an idea. Even if it does pass, it will be, I would imagine, a couple of years before they have their full report. After the full report, you're looking at another year or two to implement. I don't think that wonderful concept should affect the work that we do right now. I think it's a great thing to think about in the future, but we still need to do the job of legislating right now.
Yeah, please, of course.
I agree with you completely, except neither bill is formalized right now. And I believe that we're drifting around without a vision for Vermont's education system. And that it is an appropriate use of time for the commission to study this for something before we continue to grow on that. It may not come out in it looking the same as it does today. That's my.
Yeah, respectfully, I don't think that it makes sense, just from my perspective. I mean, we've got a program that's going, we've seen good results. The education system is changing. It's, again, it's something that has already been happening with successful results, pulling back to study it, putting a pause on it, and then spending money to study it to see if it's gonna keep being successful. When it's been successful for a couple of years and has been developing and bringing more people in, bringing in more stakeholders and so on, and these wraparound services. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, if we are going to spend money from the education fund, like this seems precisely the type of thing that we should be spending on. I can understand, you know, the robust debates for, you know, these other things like what Senator Hewlett mentioned earlier, but I don't know what I'm missing, but to me, this one seems like a no-brainer for what money should be used for when it's coming from the education fund.
Do you happen to remember how much we initially did for community schools?
No, but I can look it
Am
up.
I just checking?
Yes. So. For the 3 years. So this was originally intended to be a 3-year grant program,
Right,
$3,399,000.
okay,
Those
so,
were federal funds.
over 3 years, so about $1 million a year, so we really are, okay, I thought we were really reducing it, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, please.
So I'd simply like to say,
Yeah, no, I know.
I think that the structure of the future of the Vermont education system could look very different from what it does right now. And I think these wraparound services could be deeply embedded as a community hub to answer my colleagues' question, comment. And I'll leave it at that. We think we have a great potential for integrating services and such, but I think that we need to, as a state, come to agreement on what the priorities are and how to pursue this part. That's the essence.
Senator Hewlett.
Thank you. Regardless of the future of our education system, there will be hungry kids. There will be kids who need to go to the doctor. There will be kids who don't have a place to sleep. There will be kids without parents taking care of them. This is trying to help those kids. Regardless of the utopic future that you see, this is going to be an issue.
I agree. And I address it a different way. It's the same, we're solving the same problem with a different. You know, We don't need to be accused of, we're just explaining our perspective.
So I think it, for me, I think the need, Frank, I do think the need is there. I do worry about society right now at the moment. Just,
It's an understatement of the year.
right? I mean, some of the things I'm seeing even in my community, people angry at certain things that kind of aren't angry about, shouldn't be angry. Or
Yeah,
this and
spending
that.
money is one, with no plan,
Well,
and that's what we're doing.
well,
We don't have a plan.
well, I think what's good about this, speaking for myself, is we know that there are gonna be kids, I know, at least in my community, you need that ride to the doctors, you need those teeth looked at. There are some, whatever it might be, having that school coordinator, because the principal doesn't have the time, teachers don't have the time. If they can kind of keep these people in their positions, just as an extra set of hands doing some really good work. I think it's not, not pennies, but
So what's a mechanism to get this started? That we got the money and,
so
I
the
mean,
good news is,
it's time the community stepped up.
Well, they've been going for a few years.
yeah,
Right,
so
but not community schools, I'm saying communities need to step up, take care of the people that need to be taken care of. The government isn't gonna be able to fix everything.
well, the good news is this program is up and running. And I mean, it was ages ago. In some ways, it feels like 20 years ago. We heard some testimony on this. And I feel like, for me, again, I felt like the testimony was compelling that things are going. And I really loathe to shut down something when the need is there.
Well, I'm not saying
Yeah,
that.
no, I understand. I know, I know, I'm not putting, yeah. So I think we'll keep, it sounds like the majority of the committee is comfortable with moving this forward as is and, do so. Well, of course, people have their votes. We're gonna add other things later on. But we just have 8 more days, so I'll just. Except I did hear about health and welfare, which I think makes sense. I guess I will go to June 1. Next point. State aid to school construction. We heard from Mr. McClowry. I believe that was his name. And Ms. St. James, I don't know if you had a chance to draft. You did. And I know I just want to tidy this up, so hopefully we can move it tomorrow. And I want to make sure Senator Hashim's, is Mr. McClowry your constituent?
Oh, MacArthur.
MacArthur.
Oh, yeah, I saw your email.
Yes, yeah.
I will.
So I think I worked with Beth a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
So I think we've got something to look at. And then you make sure you feel good about it. And I we might have to talk to Mr. McCarthy tonight. Ms. St. James.
Yes, I am just pulling up your website. We're on H871, I believe, yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
And you also have draft 4.1.
Yes, you.
I don't think you've seen drafts 3.1 and 2.1. So this bill or this draft should reflect all of the changes you all have made to date that I'm aware of. And any new changes since the last time I was here on this bill are in yellow. So section 1,
Since 3.1?
I don't think I watched through 3.1. I think,
We had. Couldn't they look?
Yeah, we had it, something else.
yep, but you should be on 4.1 today. Okay. So no changes to section 1 of the bill. And no changes to section 2 on page 4.
Yep.
Section 3, the pre-qualified architecture and engineering consultants. I believe you heard testimony that suggested you add to this pre-qualification list. In addition to architecture and engineering firms, alternative project delivery consultants. And then on line 13, just adding that word consultants in addition to firms.
You want to catch it?
Do you have
Page 4, yeah,
yeah,
page 4, 98, 9,
is it in yellow? Yeah, okay, good.
So the question is, like, it's,
Please, absolutely.
what is an alternative project delivery consultant?
I don't know. This was,
I'm a project manager.
so this was I was asked to add this language based on testimony you all heard that I don't think I was privy to.
Was this, just so I know, was this Mr. MacArthur's?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
no.
this was, might have been our very reduced, condensed,
From the energy consultant.
request from the energy folks, yeah. And, I can. At the time, it sounded great. We'll put it in. We can figure out a little bit more. We can get a definition before it's presented on the floor, an alternative project delivery consultant, and I'll get a definition for everyone unless somebody remembers. Yes, and are we?
Well, I would simply submit that if you strike the word alternative, it stands on its own feet. And the project delivery consultants are, it's a profession, so are architecture and engineering,
Uh-huh.
et cetera. There is nothing that I'm aware of that's an alternative project delivery consultant. But I would like to maybe pause and let somebody react,
Yeah.
see if there is a real definition and then.
What is a project delivery consultant?
Well, project manager,
Somebody
project
that-
director, somebody who
Project
specializes in
director.
project planning,
That's what I figured.
project management profession is.
And I can tell you that, in the building of a school is a really important and big job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Does that.
Okay, and then
Clerk of the works.
Yeah.
Any of those?
I have.
Yep.
And then it says the department shall maintain the list of pre-qualified firms and consultants. Sort of broadening it. I'm not seeing any big problems there. So then on page 7, and I think this is when we get into Mr. MacArthur's suggestions.
Yes, so, and this is the only language that will reflect his, suggestions. I have an open question, I think,
Okay.
to a few of you, and I can walk through that.
Yeah, we'll do that right now. We'll see if we can all pull it together.
So, one of my understanding is that one of the, questions or requests you heard from this witness was regarding whether instead of, what we would think of as construction costs being, construction on an existing school, whether repurposing a building that is not a school would be costs that could be included in state aid for school construction. And so what I've done to address that is on page 6, just to orient you, we're in the eligibility criteria category. So remember, these are all things that the working group is just considering.
Right.
At the end of the day, they can consider whatever they want, but you are telling them at a minimum, they have to consider all of these topics.
Sure.
And so on page 7, we're adding one more consideration for eligibility criteria, and that is whether costs associated with repurposing a non-school building to use as a school should be included in the state aid to school construction program. And then that would task the working group with thinking about that and making recommendations, yay, nay, or in the middle.
That's not in this. Yeah, right.
It is page 7.
Oh,
Correct the top.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
The other concern, my understanding, and I did review the testimony, my understanding is that the other concern was over eligibility criteria on page 6, lines 18 through 20. A prohibition on exclusionary zoning regulations that would preclude lesser resourced families from living in the applicable school district. All of this is policy choice, right? So my question to you all is, how do you want to address that concern? This is, again, just a consideration. So do you want to remove this as a topic that the working group is required to consider? Do you want to change the wording on what they are considering, or do you want to leave it alone with the understanding that this is just something they need to consider, make recommendations on, and then you all are ultimately responsible for passing legislation related to?
so. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the different aspects of this. I mean, this is again a report that we're getting, right? We're working.
It's actually legislation, proposed legislation,
Proposed.
right? It's just a draft bill.
All right, so a draft bill that we can change. And I mean, I don't know if the language necessarily needs to change for between 18 to 20. And yeah, it's. Yeah, I'm not really sure, because I mean, we can still change it, assuming we're still here next year.
Yeah.
And just put a pin in that point and make sure that, or, you know, I can put a pin in that just to make sure that it's not overlooked.
Because it was something Mr. MacArthur raised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he's good on the 6, so it's just the 5, Senator Hewitt.
I know Senator.
Oh, Senator Sargent too.
Well, we don't know if there's an equal issue except in 1 or 2 communities, right?
Well,
So
just
what
saying,
they should look
consider,
at-
consider, yeah, to look at
Right,
it.
consider it,
Yeah.
and it's not an issue, it's not an issue.
Does anyone remember what Dan's issue was with 5?
I don't wanna misarticulate what he stated, but I have.
I think the St. James might remember.
My memory from his testimony is that there was a concern over, a very real concern over the fact that school districts are not in control of the zoning regulations, right? And this is a program related to. You know, so the hosting town is a municipality and then the school district is a different municipality. Those kind of competing oversight or authority.
And was it directly related to Marlborough College, the use of that building?
This issue.
I thought that was, my understanding from the testimony was that it was incorporated into page 7, the repurposing piece. But again, this is just my memory from reviewing this testimony.
He did send me a clarifying email last week, or shortly after his testimony, that I can double check. But again, I mean, it's.
Again, it's just a draft legislation.
draft.
So if you want to propose an amendment tomorrow, feel free to.
Honestly, I probably won't,
Okay,
considering that this will not,
prevent
Yeah.
you addressing it in the future.
yeah.
Great. Great, so.
And that, you know, if they take testimony on that topic, right, that would be a great
Opportunity, yeah.
opportunity there. So we are gonna move to, again, to orient you, on page 7, we're in the incentives category. So are there topics or areas where there could be kind of bonuses in the state aid to school construction program based on a supervisory union's plan on certain areas? And there was a suggestion to add, because we have newer and fewer buildings, kind of the opposite of that on page 8, historic preservation. Again, consideration as an incentive. And then page 8, we're in the insurance and certification process. Line 14 is just some language change. I felt that the language was very awkward before. It has not changed substantively at all, but I just wanted to highlight that that language changed. It used to read at district, the word assurance was used as a verb and it didn't make sense. So I just reworded it, no substantive change there.
Great, thank you.
And then on page 10, again, just to orient you, we go to look at page 9, we're in the efficiencies category. So areas where economizations or efficiencies might be gained in the creation of the program. On page 10, here again, we're looking back to that energy testimony that you had. There was a suggestion to add to the cost containment strategies, alternative project delivery and consideration of risk transfer.
Seeing any questions or concerns?
Page 11, you've added a new category, grant opportunities. So the working group shall consider and make recommendations as to whether, and if so, how state and federal grant opportunities shall impact the working group's proposed construction aid program. And O, utilization of renewable energy. The working group shall make recommendations that approach the utilization of renewable energy in a comprehensive manner incorporating existing programs and laws into the school construction aid program where possible. Then, just to orient you on page 11, this is on line 12, this is the list of folks the working group has to consult with. And on page 12, we added the Principals Association, NEA, the Bond Bank. You've already added Vermont Legal Aid Disability Law Project and Dale, Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Deafblind Services. And now you've added also Vermont's congressional delegation.
And again, they can consult with whomever, but this is where we're at.
And that's it.
Please.
Thank you. So Dale is sort of on the same line as the deaf, hard of hearing, deaf blind services.
I believe that Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Deafblind Services is the name of a program within Dale.
Oh, within Dale, okay. Thank you. So it has to be that specific group within, under the umbrella of Dale.
That was the request. We could do whatever we want,
Right.
yes, and it's a policy decision. Everybody gonna probably be okay voting this tomorrow? Great. Senator Sheen, while I'm thinking of it. Miscellaneous ed bill, if you wanna continue the conversation in some way, deaf, hard of hearing, that would be a vehicle. It is interesting. I don't think we wanna get this specific, maybe we would, but. No, probably, but the community school thing and those grants are. I would hope that if a school needed support for those students, they might be able to access it. I'm not sure, but just think about it. I know you,
Okay, so I get what you're saying.
anyhow, just think about it. We're not gonna move this until we start to see some more action on the House, which I think we'll see. I don't know. I believe we were getting 2 of your bills back soon. Senator Buick literacy. Okay. Do you have any updates on votes that they might be proposing?
S-191 passed out of the House yesterday with no
Yep.
changes,
Great.
so
On its
that's.
way to the governor.
Yep.
Great.
S-120, I presented to House Appropriations today.
Great.
Oh no, I'm sorry, S-191, they did make changes. S-120, they did not make changes.
Great.
S-191, they did not make substantive changes to your work. They added some provisions.
Okay.
And then, they're in the process of taking testimony on everything else right now.
Which would include literacy.
Cell phones,
Miscellaneous ed.
CTE, miscellaneous ed.
And libraries, another committee.
That is in government operations, and I did walk through that,
Recently?
yesterday.
Okay. I'm hoping, I saw Mike in the hall. I'm hoping it just sounded like they seemed pretty comfortable with it. But I don't know.
I had to leave after the walkthrough yesterday,
Yeah.
but they were taking testimony after my walkthrough, so.
The other thing that we need to decide and have more testimony on it tomorrow had to be scheduled because of the floor is BOCES. And so I don't know if anybody has any general thoughts. I know Senator Buell, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had thought maybe incorporate BOCES into the first section of the bill. If that's something that is interesting, kind of get a little conversation going on it, but if people have other ideas.
Can I query, as
Yeah.
part of the commission study, is that BOCES in there as?
No, I
analysis?
mean, I was just still grappling with BOCES, and I think I've come around to the idea of voting yes on BOCES, but it took me a while to get there.
Okay,
That would,
please.
I would submit that if you didn't support the BOCES as a standalone concept, I would certainly support putting them into the yield bill, into the section about what the commission's looking at, because I think that there's a bigger topic, and that's the administrative balance. And BOCES is part of that. Those,
Senator Gill, you asked for us to hear from several people. We had to reschedule them because of the floor. Do you want to still hear from those people, given your perhaps altered position?
I mean, I think there are still some folks who, I mean, I think knowledge is power, so even if I'm for BOCES, it's probably not a bad idea to
Okay.
hear what people are doing without BOCES. I think it, if possible,
Sounds good.
if not,
That sounds great. No, that sounds great. And then we have our report on the Secretary of Education. The way it's been recommended is we just put the question, each question, we have the answer that follows. We have a typed up, what's the program called? Record of action. No, what's it called? The program that sort of took all the. Oh, the transcript. Yeah, so it's all been transcribed. Morgan and Megan have gone through it. I'm going to give it to the entire committee, but I believe what it's going to say is, here was the question, here was the response, here's the question, here's the response, all the way through, please.
I agree, because it's going to be close to impossible for us to create an objective report collectively, considering that
Yeah.
we do have different perspectives. So I think
Yes, good.
we'll all have our statements.
Yeah.
And those are our reports individually, but if there's requirement for a committee report, it's gonna be, again, it's gonna be just extremely challenging
It would
to
take
make
forever.
something that's objective, that contains our opinion.
Yeah, the pro temp suggested early on that it might just be a way for people to flip through, read the question, see the response rather than watching it or have hearing. But what I hope to do is get a copy to everybody by tomorrow morning. Take a look at it, make sure you're feeling good about it. The transcript is. It's solid, but if you look at it, Megan went through to try to clean it up. Just make sure you're comfortable with that we captured the response, so feel free to look through things again. I mean, for example, Jerry Williams, we had to change. It was Terry Williams. It is Terry Williams. That kind of little thing periodically popped up. But Megan, I think, has done a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I would simply submit that the idea of giving that report, or whatever report, to the Senate well in advance of the vote is critical. This routine of passing out paper as the person stands up to give the presentation, the report, is absolutely
Yeah.
arcane. And
Yeah.
we could help everybody by, okay, here's the package, read it at your leisure, ask questions of, what you thought the intent of the question, what you thought the answer.
Appreciate you saying that. It certainly wasn't my intention to pass it out that day,
No,
but it's a good
I
reminder.
just wanna
It's a good
reinforce.
reminder, yeah, that things happen fast on the floor, people pass things out. So hopefully that'll happen, yes, thank you.
what's the sense of floor time tomorrow? Because I'm wondering, because we have a vote to whether or not to add as 203 to the miscellaneous ed bill, and if we don't have the time.
I think we should be, we start at 11:30, start in the morning.
Right.
I'm thinking we should be in here right at 1.
Okay.
I really do, because I didn't see a big calendar left. I think it will be on the floor for 35, yeah. 40. No, I understand, and morning committees still go all through next week. And then afternoon committees will go the following week also, and hopefully be done by the 10th, but Christine thinks it's gonna be another week. It's gonna be
I
pretty
should put my.
You think it's gonna be a week beyond the 10th?
I don't know, I was just smiling in general.
Super happy.
Oh, and Miss St. James, in terms of that process, we'll just send it to editing.
Okay,
And they'll
Great.
just clean it up also after senators have seen it and weighed in. And so there aren't any more, just looking for typos. The transcript thing is pretty impressive
Yeah.
as you're speaking, but
How many pages, out of curiosity?
you know how many pages? Oh, sure. Megan has sent it. 300.
Are you also gonna distribute a link to the video? Just to kind of like.
Sure, we can
I
add
mean,
that.
that's a good
Absolutely.
option.
We were gonna print it, I was thinking about printing it up for everybody so they could.
But yeah, great.
Yeah, and they'll have a link.
But that whole body language interaction is.
Yeah, whatever.
There's some
Well, the
value.
link
people-
is
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, make it
17.
very easy.
17 pages.
Oh, it's not bad.
It's not bad at all. Yeah. Question, answer question. St. James, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Evening.